General Hospital spoilers reveal that there's a growing storm surrounding one cryptic hint dropped by the Laura Wright who plays Carly Spencer on General Hospital. And it's ignited a wildfire of speculation across fan circles, the possibility of a shocking murder mystery centered on Drew Cain. While the post might have seemed casual to some, her decision to liken Drew to the infamous J.R. Ewing has now taken on a life of its own. That single comparison, referencing one of the most legendary whodunit moments in television history, was no throwaway compliment. In fact, it may very well be a deliberate breadcrumb, subtly preparing the audience for a dramatic shift in tone and stakes for Port Charles, a shift in which Drew's potential death or attempted assassination becomes the catalyst for a seismic transformat. Ion in the show's narrative structure, dynamics, and power balance. For months now, Drew has found himself walking a precarious tightrope between hero and anti-hero. Once regarded as a stable presence, a moral compass trying to reclaim a semblance of identity and purpose, he's slowly been pushed into a much darker, more controversial space. His manipulation of Alexis, his decisions around Scout's custody, and his behind-the-scenes power moves within various legal and business frameworks have painted him in shades of gray, no longer a pure protagonist, but not quite a villain. And it's precisely this moral ambiguity that makes him the perfect center for a mystery of this magnitude. The allusion to J.R. Ewing is far from random. In Dallas, J.R. was a ruthless businessman with a long list of enemies, making his shooting in 1980 the perfect dramatic bombshell. Millions were left speculating who pulled the trigger, and the eventual reveal became a cultural milestone. Now, imagine Drew in that same role, an influential figure whose growing list of adversaries includes former allies, betrayed family members, and morally conflicted characters who once trusted him. Whether it's someone seeking justice, revenge, or simply a way to eliminate a threat, the list of potential shooters is already extensive, even before any official storyline has begun. The notion of "who shot Drew" is more than just a clever homage, it's a potential reset button. A narrative device that allows the writers to not only raise the emotional and dramatic stakes but also to explore the ripple effects of violence, betrayal, and loss within every corner of Port Charles. If Drew were to be shot, the aftershocks would hit characters like Carly, Michael, Willow, Alexis, and others with full force. It would crack open secrets, provoke dangerous confrontations, and ignite buried tensions that have been simmering for far too long. And the beauty of this potential storyline lies in its flexibility. Drew doesn't necessarily have to die. Like JR, he could survive, giving the mystery an added layer of suspense as he possibly loses his memory, points fingers in the wrong direction, or uses the event as a platform for transformation or vengeance. The mystery could be drawn out for weeks, even months, with red herrings, false confessions, and shocking reveals that keep viewers glued to the screen. At its core, this storyline would reflect a significant tonal shift in the show, one that moves away from redemption arcs and into morally complex territory, where trust is fragile and loyalty is often an illusion. Drew, who has slowly burned bridges with those closest to him, would find himself paying the price for the power he's accumulated and the enemies he's made. Every decision he's made recently, from keeping secrets about legal manipulations, to possibly bribing officials, to dominating personal relationships under the guise of protection, would come under scrutiny in a way that would make the audience reevaluate everything they thought they knew about him. Moreover, the "who shot Drew" arc would not exist in a vacuum. It would bleed into other plots, the courtroom battles over custody and corruption, the ongoing investigations involving other characters' criminal histories, and the subtle manipulations occurring within both the legal and medical communities in Port Charles. This isn't just about Drew being attacked, it's about what that attack represents, the moment the moral fabric of the town begins to unravel. Carly would be forced to confront her own complicity in Drew's transformation. Did her loyalty blind her to how far he had fallen? Did she push him into becoming someone who could no longer distinguish right from wrong? Meanwhile, Alexis might find herself consumed with guilt, torn between her previous romantic entanglement with Drew and her growing awareness of his unchecked ambition. Michael and Willow would be pulled into the storm as well. Especially if they find out Drew had used his influence to manipulate circumstances around their family or custody arrangements. Suspicion would hang over every interaction, every conversation, every glance. Old alliances would shatter. Former enemies might find themselves aligned in their pursuit of truth. And new players, characters who have been waiting in the wings, might finally seize the chaos as an opportunity to rise. Perhaps a private investigator begins quietly unraveling the connections between Drew and a long-forgotten criminal case. Or maybe someone like Nina, known for operating in the shadows, finds herself a suspect for reasons no one sees coming. The brilliance of invoking the J.R. Ewing comparison is that it primes the audience not only for a shock but for the kind of layered, slow-burning suspense that General Hospital hasn't tapped into in years. A mystery that spans not just weeks of speculation, but years of buried resentment, betrayal, and consequences. It creates space for the show to explore not just who fired the bullet, but what it means to carry power, how one man's fall from grace can infect everyone around him. And how even in a town filled with secrets, some truths refuse to stay buried. Even the structure of the show would shift. Flashbacks, unreliable memories, distorted timelines, anonymous letters, intercepted phone calls, each week peeling back another layer until the final moment when the shooter is revealed in a gasp-inducing twist that redefines everything the audience thought they knew. And when that moment comes, the fallout would be devastating. Relationships would end. Trust would collapse. And Drew himself, assuming he survives, would have to face a reckoning that goes beyond physical recovery. It would be a spiritual and moral reckoning, forcing him to choose between redemption and revenge. Between rebuilding his life or embracing the darkness that nearly killed him. The choice to tease this arc, if indeed that's what Wright was doing, shows the brilliance of long-term storytelling. It allows the audience to become part of the narrative, fueling theories, debating motives, choosing sides. It reignites the passion that makes General Hospital such a staple of American television drama. And perhaps most importantly, it shows that no character, no matter how central or seemingly untouchable, is immune from consequences. So as whispers grow louder, and fans start asking not if, but when, one thing is certain. Port Charles is on the brink of a story that could redefine its very foundations. Whether Drew is shot, survives, or even disappears entirely as part of a larger plan. The echoes of that gunshot, literal or metaphorical, will reverberate through every storyline, every family, every corner of the show. The question isn't just who might want him dead. It's what version of him has to die for General Hospital to evolve into the next, more dangerous chapter. Sidwell and Brennan are rapidly emerging as the two most likely suspects in what could become one of the most explosive murder mysteries General Hospital has ever attempted. Their growing presence in the narrative isn't coincidental, it's strategic, layered, and sinister. Both men have complicated ties to Drew, and the web of manipulation, obsession, and power dynamics swirling around them has now reached a fever pitch. This isn't just a character arc anymore. It's the unraveling of a new era in Port Charles, marked by violence, revenge, and a shift so dramatic that it threatens to redefine the moral center of the show. The idea that either Sidwell or Brennan could be the one to pull the trigger isn't just speculation, it's supported by a mounting series of narrative adjustments, each more intense and psychologically unhinged than the last. Sidwell has already demonstrated his willingness to break the law, bribe judges, and reconfigure family court outcomes just to ensure control. But what happens when legal manipulation is no longer enough? What happens when the only way to maintain that control is to eliminate the threat entirely, and in this case, that threat is Drew? Sidwell's cold calculation and shadowy influence make him an ideal suspect in a story that is spiraling into darker territory. Then there's Brennan, a figure whose emotional detachment is only matched by his ruthlessness. His ties to covert operations and intelligence networks give him the means, and his emotional volatility gives him the motive. Brennan operates like a man who has long ago decided that rules are flexible and morality is fluid. If Drew stands in the way of his agenda, personal or professional, then removing him would be just another strategic move in a long line of decisions made from behind the scenes. Brennan doesn't need to justify the kill emotionally, he just needs it to make sense in the cold logic of survival and control. But it goes deeper than just identifying suspects. What's truly shocking is how the entire structure of General Hospital is being recalibrated to support this growing storm. The storytelling itself is shifting, the tone is darker. The pacing more relentless, the stakes more lethal. This is no longer a show where characters are simply manipulated emotionally. Now, their very lives hang in the balance. Drew, once seen as an anchor, a figure of redemption, has now become the axis around which the show's most unstable forces are spinning. And as the danger escalates, it's becoming clear that the question isn't whether Drew will be attacked, it's when, and by whom. This transformation in narrative isn't subtle. It's deliberate, disorienting, and undeniably thrilling. What we are witnessing is the show evolving in real time, shifting its focus from interpersonal tension to existential crisis. It has arrived, and it's consuming every storyline it touches. Sidwell and Brennan aren't just side characters anymore. They are chaos agents, reshaping the very DNA of the series. The obsession is real, obsession with control, with justice, with rewriting the rules. That obsession is beginning to bleed into every scene, every confrontation. Every quiet conversation that suddenly holds layers of threat and implication. It's not just about who hates Drew. It's about who fears him. Who sees him as the one piece that, if removed, allows everything else to fall into place. And that level of danger changes everything. This is one of those narrative shifts that feels irreversible. Once a show crosses into this kind of high-stakes, murder-centric storytelling, it can never fully return to its previous equilibrium. The atmosphere becomes charged, unstable, electric. Audiences start watching differently, looking for clues, questioning motives, bracing for betrayals. It becomes a game of tension, with every character potentially complicit. Every glance potentially hiding a secret, every line of dialogue a veiled threat. The moment Sidwell and Brennan became viable suspects, the nature of the story shifted. The themes grew darker. The implications more devastating. And perhaps most unsettling of all, it began to make sense. That's how you know General Hospital is entering a new phase, not because it's doing something wild for shock value, but because the pieces are falling into place with unnerving precision. Drew has made too many enemies. The system around him has become too unstable. Something has to break, and the writers know exactly where to apply the pressure. Whether or not Drew is killed. The very suggestion that he might be has already changed the emotional temperature of the show. There's no going back. There's only forward, into the heart of an obsession that threatens to consume everyone. Sidwell and Brennan are no longer just characters, they are triggers, and someone is about to pull one. Carly is now facing one of the most dangerous turning points of her life as confirmation of Drew's death sends shockwaves through Port Charles. What was once just a growing sense of unease has now solidified into a full-blown crisis. With Drew officially declared dead, everything begins to shift, alliances crumble, motives shift. And all eyes land squarely on Carly. No longer just a grieving woman or a loyal companion, she becomes something far more precarious. A liability, a threat, and perhaps even a target. In the wake of this tragedy, a new wave of adjustments is unfolding within the storyline of General Hospital, signaling a radical departure from the show's former rhythms. Carly's role is being redefined not by choice but by consequence. The confirmation of Drew's death doesn't just affect her emotionally, it places her directly in the crosshairs of those who engineered his downfall, and perhaps more alarmingly, those who now fear what she might know. Sidwell and Brennan, two powerful and unpredictable forces, are beginning to circle her with increasing intensity. Their interest in Carly is not driven by compassion or remorse, but by calculation. Both men understand that grief can unearth secrets and that Carly, sharp, instinctual, and deeply connected to Drew, may be closer to the truth than anyone realizes. That makes her dangerous. That makes her a problem that needs to be neutralized. Whether they view her as someone to manipulate, silence, or eliminate altogether remains to be seen, but the danger is clear and immediate. Carly, perhaps unknowingly, is now standing on the edge of a narrative cliff, one wrong move away from becoming the next victim in a story that has spiraled far beyond simple betrayal or loss. This new storyline development marks one of the most unsettling adjustments the show has delivered in recent months. The emotional landscape of General Hospital has been recalibrated into something darker and more volatile. Gone are the days when grief led to healing and closure. Now, grief is a trigger, a signal that something more sinister is unfolding beneath the surface. Carly isn't just mourning a loved one, she's navigating a labyrinth of suspicion, espionage, and psychological warfare. The confirmation of Drew's death doesn't close a chapter, it opens a door to chaos. Everything about Carly's current situation screams of impending danger. The air around her feels charged, like something is about to detonate, and she can sense it. The looks people give her are changing. The phone calls she receives feel off. The silences in conversations stretch too long. This isn't paranoia, it's survival instinct. Carly knows what it means when men like Sidwell and Brennan start watching you. It means you're either useful or expendable. And if she doesn't act quickly, she may not have the chance to become the former before being reduced to the latter. The emotional toll is only part of the story. The strategic implications are far more insidious. Carly knows Drew didn't die in a vacuum. He had enemies, some obvious, some buried beneath layers of false alliances. She may not know exactly what got him killed, but she can sense the machinery behind it. The whispered meetings, the encrypted messages, the sudden changes in behavior. She's been through enough in her life to know when something isn't just wrong, it's orchestrated. And now, as she begins to piece together fragments of a conspiracy that led to Drew's death, Carly understands that the closer she gets to the truth, the closer she comes to becoming the next casualty. Sidwell's attention is particularly disturbing. Cold, methodical, and backed by influence that extends into legal and governmental systems. He doesn't make moves unless they're calculated for maximum effect. His sudden interest in Carly suggests one of two possibilities. Either he believes she knows something that could unravel his agenda, or he's planning to use her as a pawn to manipulate others who still care about her. Either option is dangerous. Either option places Carly in a position of extreme vulnerability. Brennan, on the other hand, is a different kind of threat. His brand of danger is more unpredictable. Rooted in emotional detachment and psychological control. Brennan doesn't need to shout to intimidate. His mere presence in a room can alter the temperature. If he has turned his focus onto Carly, it's not out of curiosity, it's because he sees her as part of a larger equation that must be solved, managed, or erased. And with Drew gone, Brennan may now view Carly as the last remaining link to a secret he's desperate to protect. That makes her expendable. That makes her next. But Carly isn't without her strengths. She's survived loss before. She's battled addiction, betrayal, abandonment, and death. But this time is different. This time, the threat isn't emotional, it's existential. She isn't being betrayed by someone she loves. She's being hunted by men who kill without remorse and who move within systems so powerful that justice becomes irrelevant. She's caught in a game she didn't sign up for, where the rules shift daily and the players wear too many masks to identify clearly. The question now becomes, can Carly outmaneuver them? Can she transform her grief into strategy, her heartbreak into weaponry? Can she use what she knows about Drew, about the way he operated, to dig into the mystery of his death and find the smoking gun that could bring Sidwell and Brennan down before they bury her under the same lies that claimed Drew? Her survival depends on it. Every choice Carly makes from this point forward matters. Who she trusts. What she says. When she decides to push back and when she decides to disappear. Her instincts must be sharper than ever. Her emotions must be guarded. Because in a world where power is everything and truth is disposable, Carly is now both witness and suspect, mourner and target. One step too close to the truth and she could vanish without a trace. One hesitation too long and someone else could end up paying the price. The confirmation of Drew's death is not an ending. It is a siren, blaring through the corridors of Port Charles, signaling the rise of a new kind of war, one fought not just with guns and threats, but with silence, manipulation, and psychological pressure. Carly is no longer just part of the story. She is the story. And if she wants to survive, she'll need to become something she's never been before, the hunter. Not the hunted. Because when Sidwell and Brennan start watching, you don't wait for them to strike. You strike first. Or you don't survive at all. Drew is on the brink of losing control over Scout and Danny. And this unraveling of his parental authority marks the beginning of one of the most devastating personal catastrophes unfolding in General Hospital. What once seemed like stable ground beneath him, his role as a father, protector, and moral compass, is now eroding at a frightening pace, leaving him exposed, desperate, and increasingly unrecognizable to those around him. This isn't just a matter of custody or legal battles. It's the emotional disintegration of a man whose identity was deeply entwined with his children. To lose that anchor is to lose himself. And the consequences are beginning to ripple out in destructive waves across Port Charles. For months, Drew has operated under the belief that his intentions were noble. That every decision he made, even those veering into ethically gray territory, was ultimately in service of protecting his children. But that narrative is collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. His manipulations, once masked as strategy, are now viewed as control tactics. His insistence on dictating what's best for Scout and Danny no longer resonates as fatherly concern, it reeks of coercion. Those around him are beginning to see through the facade, and the courts, the families, and even the children themselves are starting to pull away. The truth is undeniable. Drew is losing his grip, and with it, the very relationships that once humanized him. The tragedy is that Drew never saw this coming. He believed that love alone would be enough to keep Scout close, to maintain Danny's respect. But love without trust, without transparency, is a fragile illusion. And in trying to shield them from chaos, he became its source. His efforts to control every variable, where Scout lives, who Danny associates with, what stories are told and which are silenced, have only bred resentment and resistance. Children aren't pawns, and the moment Drew treated them as such, he began writing the first lines of his own downfall. The emotional cost is catastrophic. Drew, once a figure of strength and sacrifice, is now spiraling. His moral compass is cracked. His judgment is clouded. The pain of watching his children slip away, not due to death or tragedy, but by choice, is a slow, agonizing torment. Scout no longer runs to him with the same light in her eyes. Danny's conversations have grown colder, shorter, more calculated. They're distancing themselves not just physically but emotionally. Intuitively understanding what many adults around them have only recently begun to acknowledge, Drew is no longer safe. Not because he would hurt them, but because his version of love has become conditional, controlling, and ultimately unsustainable. What makes this particular storyline so devastating is that it's not built on a single explosive event, it's a gradual erosion. The kind of emotional death that happens not in one moment, but over many small ones, a missed recital, an overheard argument, a silent car ride home. Every quiet disappointment adds weight to the growing distance between father and child. And Drew, in his desperation, may soon begin to lash out, not out of malice, but from the sheer terror of losing everything that gave his life meaning. That kind of panic breeds recklessness. It invites ruin. The fallout won't be isolated. The people closest to Drew, Carly, Alexis, Michael, Willow, will all be forced to pick sides. Courtroom battles may resume, with bitter accusations and painful testimonies. Psychological evaluations could come into play. Allegiances may crumble as those who once supported Drew begin to question whether his choices are driven by love or by ego. And in the center of this storm will be two children, scarred not by neglect or abuse, but by the slow decay of trust in someone they once idolized. This is more than a character's fall from grace. It's the collapse of a family unit. The implosion of a father's legacy, the exposure of a man who tried to be everything to everyone and ended up alienating the people he loved most. Drew's unraveling is no longer a subplot, it's a central tragedy in the evolving narrative of General Hospital. And as his influence slips further from his grasp, as Scout and Danny build new lives with other parental figures or forge independence too early, Drew will be left to reckon with a hollowed-out version of the future he once envisioned. This is the true catastrophe, not just that Drew is losing Scout and Danny, but that he doesn't know how to stop it. Not through money, not through influence, not even through love. Because the damage has already been done, and now all that remains is consequence. The question is no longer whether Drew will lose control, it's how much of himself will be left when the dust finally settles.